Okay, let's make a start in our final panel for the day. It's really been a fantastic set of panels and wonderful set of questions as well from the audience. So look very much forward to the discussion that we'll have after hearing from our speakers. My name's Llewellyn Hughes. I'm a faculty member at the Crawford School here at the ANU. And let me first begin by acknowledging and paying my respects to the traditional owners of the land upon which we meet. This panel focuses on science and technology policy, both basic science and applied. And I'm delighted to be able to introduce three fantastic speakers that we have today, who I will introduce for you in a moment. Some of you may have noticed that our Minister for Industry and Science, Ed Husic, gave a speech at the American Chamber of Commerce last month, and he made some really interesting remarks about the direction of Australia's policy in science and technology. He noted that this was in reference to the United States, excited about deepening levels of cooperation between the two countries. I'm paraphrasing his speech here. And working to ensure that they partner together on technology collaboration, clean energy transition, and advanced manufacturing. He also said that the energy transition has really profound implications, obviously for the climate and future generations, but also for the economic structure of Australia. And particularly he noted that Australia's future success depended on us as a country becoming better at creating value-added products. That is, in addition to continuing to provide resources to the world, also thinking about how we might build our innovation system and our systems for developing and exporting technologies. Now, the Minister made another point, which was with regards to economic complexity. In the area of innovation studies, there's quite an interesting and relatively new set of ideas which focus on the importance of economic complexity in national economies for driving long-run economic growth. Right? The idea is that innovation is most successful when it comes from, you build on existing capabilities, right, within economies. The more capabilities that you have, or the greater complexity that you have within an economy, the more potential combinations of new ideas and new products that you can make, which you can then use domestically and export. There is an index of economic complexity that was developed by one of the people who have been the proponents of thinking about this problem, Ricardo Hausmann from the Kennedy School at Harvard. And the Minister noted that Australia currently stands 93rd out of 133 countries in our economic complexity index, and that we've also fallen over time relative to many other OECD countries. Now, as you all are probably aware, both Australia and Japan have also recently announced net zero strategies, that is committing to reducing greenhouse gas emissions to net zero by mid-century. And in Japan, this has led to a re-energizing, it's hard to avoid that pun, of industry policies through the GX, or Green Transformation set of policies, which is a multi-sectoral innovation and green industry policy. And the Australian government, you will have seen as well, is also beginning to really seriously think about innovation and green industry policy for the first time in a long time, as the Minister alluded to. Now, when we think about industrial strategies and we think about innovation, interdependence is crucial. It's not only about national innovation systems, but it's also about the global implications of domestic policies, as we've already seen in the energy space. We also know that for a number of technologies, solar photovoltaics is a key one. Innovation systems are global. So, research labs, fabs, which are doing, leading, cutting-edge manufacturing, can be located outside the home country of the countries which are developing those technologies. So international cooperation is really important, and I think that's really what Minister Husic was referring to. Now, today we're going to hear from three speakers who are going to give us different perspectives on science and technology. And so let me introduce them to you now briefly. Their bios are all available, as Shiro said, in the booklet. So I'll introduce them briefly now, but please do take a look at the booklet at your leisure. First, we're going to hear from Associate Professor Masaru Yarime, Professor Yarime is an associate professor in the Division of Public Policy at Hong Kong University for Science and Technology, and he's also an honorary associate professor at University College London and a visiting associate professor at the Graduate School of Public Policy at the University of Tokyo. And I feel like we should probably get you to be an honorary associate professor at the ANU as well at some point. It's really terrific that he was able to join us from Hong Kong. He's come down from Hong Kong to speak with us. One of a real global leader in science, technology, and innovation policy, particularly as it focuses on sustainability and energy, and particularly as those relate to data, that is, Internet of Things and AI. So we'll hear from Professor Yarime first. Second, we'll hear from Professor Anna Moore, who is a professor of astronomy and also the director of the Australian National University's Institute for Space, in which role she sets the strategy for space-related activities at the ANU, which sounds like a pretty cool job, I have to say. Professor Moore joined us from Caltech and has worked with Japan as well as other astronomy institutes around the world. And third, and certainly not least, we'll hear from Takero Izuhara. Mr. Izuhara is a director at ST Solutions Australia, which is a SoftBank company, and he's been working in the IT sector for many years, particularly focused on AI, on robotics, and also on process automation in Singapore, in Japan, and in Australia. And I'm happy to announce, some of you may have seen one of these in Japan, that he's been involved in developing the high-functioning AI robot Pepper. And actually, the hotel that I stay at when I'm in Tokyo sometimes has one of those in the lobby. I always give it a bit of a wave, and it kind of waves shyly back at me when I go in to check my luggage in. So the speakers are all coming at the kind of question of science and technology from slightly different angles. We've got space, we've got AI and automation, we've got sustainability issues. So what we've asked them to do is open with about 15 minutes of remarks each. Each are using just a few slides, and then we'll come back together and begin discussions. So let's begin with Professor Yarime. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Hughes, for your kind introduction. Currently, I'm at the Division of Public Policy at the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. I used to be based at the University of Tokyo for many years, and then I moved to Hong Kong about 6.5 years ago. And then I'm now looking at the situation of science and technology from outside the country. I think that gives me a lot of a fresh opportunity to look at the situation of Japan. Also, I'm affiliated with the University College London. They have also a department particularly focusing on science, technology, engineering, public policy. I think increasingly major universities in science and technology are trying to establish such a kind of unit or institute, trying to look at how science and technology affect all the societal issues like sustainability, economic security, and also international relations. I think it's good to have multiple perspectives to look at these very complex interrelated issues. Okay. Yes, the science and technology is also a very broad issue, and there are so many issues we need to discuss. But just as a kind of a snapshot of the current situation with regard to science, which is represented by publication. So you see, this is the kind of ranking of countries with regard to the publication of scientific papers published in journals. So US has been the leader, and then Japan used to be the second. And then recently, China has really increased the number of publications. And then the latest one, China is the number one country, and then US the second, and then Japan is in the fifth position. Even though the absolute number of publications has been increasing, but then that's simply other countries are publishing more than Japan. So this is the current situation. There are a lot of other indicators like the 10% top 10% publications or top 1% publications. And then the performance of Japan is not necessarily so good compared with the absolute number of publications. Okay. And then with regard to patents, which would be considered as a kind of indicator for technological development. There are a lot of debates about whether we could use patent as an indicator of innovation, because the value of patent could be very different depending upon patent 1 or patent 2. But then still, we have a well-established database globally, so that it's quite useful. So I think still many researchers use patent data. And then this is based upon the number of patent families, which means that you can apply for patents. The same patents can be applied for in different countries. So we try to integrate them as just one patent, so that we don't count the same patent 2 times or 3 times. And then here, Japan has been the leader in the world with regard to the number of patent families. Even though the other countries, like particularly China, has been increasing the number of publications, the patent applications in recent years, but still somehow Japan maintains the number of patents here. Yes, and then this is the share of patent families by technological fields. And then here, Japan has been quite strong with regard to electrical engineering and also general machinery and then transport equipment. But compared with them, let's say biomedical devices and biotech are relatively weak. So you can see which country will be relatively strong with regard to the technological fields. And then if you look at the US, then you see the biomedical biotech, they are very strong. So compared with, let's say, electrical engineering. And then China, the ICT in particular, has been really progressing in recent years. So in a way, globally speaking, we can see, ideally, we can see a kind of complementarity between different countries, because different strengths are there in different countries. And then this is just a figure taken from WIPO recent report. This is the share of global electrical patenting by Japan, Korea, and China. So East Asian countries are very dominant in this domain. Here, electric patenting includes broadly all this more conventional audiovisual technology, but also telecommunication technology, and also apparatus and energy and IT, semiconductors, and also other computer technology. So it's quite broad category. But then you see, well, Japan used to be really almost half of the electric patents obtained in the past. But then after that, Korea increased, and then China has increased. So in a way, Japan has been leading in this domain, but then increasingly Korea and then China has been really increasing their patenting activities in this domain. And then, because of the time limitation, I just want to mention some of the areas which somehow I have involved. This is some of the research activities I've been working with my colleagues in Tokyo. Somehow we try to work on this distributed energy systems with peer-to-peer energy exchange based on blockchain. And this is still very preliminary in the sense that it's not yet scaled up to the mainstream in the energy sector. But then that you could see kind of potential of somehow linking the green transformation and also digital transformation. So these two areas are really emphasized by the Japanese government, for example, but also industry has the very promised, in a way, large expectation with regard to creating markets and then to try to export them to the global markets. And then here we see the photovoltaics put on the roof, and then the batteries, and then now EVs are putting into it, and then we can also exchange energy. So now the households can become producer of energy in addition to a consumer, so they become a prosumer of energy. So this kind of idea of distributed energy systems has become particularly important after the experience of the Fukushima the earthquake and then the Fukushima accident in 2011. Because of this, somehow that incident showed vulnerability of the traditional concentrated energy system, so that we need to maintain a more resilient energy supply, so that this kind of distributed system could potentially provide a kind of solution to a vulnerability of the more conventional energy system. But then we also try to look at the challenges with regard to technological, economic, social, environmental, and institutional issues. And then particularly, we found that institutional dimension, which includes the regulations, policies, and also the issues like privacy and also data security, on the standardization. So these kind of issues are probably one of the most important challenges we need to address, in addition to purely technological issues. And then somehow trying to linking this data transformation and energy transformation, I think recently the Japanese government has really tried to promote the sharing and using data among key stakeholders. So one issue here is how to make a balance between all the concerns like privacy, security on the one hand, and then the promoting data sharing, data exchange, and data usage on the other. So there are many different ways to address this challenge with regard to data governance. So for example, some of the countries like UK, Canada, and probably maybe Australia, the one idea is to establish data trust, which is independent, so that somehow you try to maintain a kind of neutrality and also transparency, so that the stakeholders can see how our data is collected and then how data is used by whom, for what purposes. So creating a kind of independent entity and then ask that entity to manage data is one way of looking at dealing with this. And then, so in a way, it can be understood as a kind of concentrated, centralized system in a particular city or maybe country. And then the Japanese government seems to emphasize a bit different approach in the sense that they try to make it more decentralized in the sense that they create a kind of common data linkage platform, but then that the data is, different kinds of databases owned and managed by different players, different actors, like government or companies or maybe NGOs. And also the applications are provided by different stakeholders, different companies, or maybe the regional government can play that role. And then try to facilitate the linkages among the data providers and also data users, and then to facilitate the use of data. So I think increasingly, for example, the electricity consumption data, which is traditionally owned by the power companies. And then now, I think the regulation has been just changed recently, and then that other stakeholders can have access to the data so that you can use the data about energy consumption for other purposes. So if you know how energy consumption is recorded, and then you can see when people are inside the house, for example, and then you can maybe adjust the timing of delivery of other goods and services. Or you can measure the health condition of people, particularly elderly people living alone. If there's no change in energy consumption, then you see something happen in that household, for example. So then that kind of data usage going beyond its own industry would be also exploring huge opportunities for data usage. And then this is actually my last slide. So what are the areas we can expect collaboration between Japan and Australia? I think one thing I could mention here is what could be called critical technology assessment and management. And I think this has become quite important in the context of economic security, as discussed in the previous session. Obviously, we need to have information where the minerals are coming from, where the resources come from, and then how they are processed, and by what means, and then what are the impacts. So I think traditionally, this argument has been made by all the security experts. But then that increasingly, we need to combine that kind of perspective with, let's say, environmental assessment or social assessment. So what are the CO2 emissions? What are the use of labor? What are the impact on local communities? So these kind of arguments can be combined with a more conventional approach to economic security, where these materials are coming from. So in a way, I think these discussions tend to be discussed in a separate communities in the past, where there are very different kinds of people. Right? But then I think we need to have a kind of more integrated, comprehensive, critical technology assessment and management. So this would be one area which I could imagine that Japan and Australia can work together. And particularly Australia is very strong with regard to all the minerals and resources. And Japan would be very keen to work with Australia scholars and industry, for example, to look at how we can assess and then how we can manage all these the opportunities and challenges through the supply chain. So as I mentioned also in the previous session, the hydrogen is one big area. But then I think in March, the first shipment experimentation from Australia to Japan about the hydrogen. But this hydrogen is produced by using coal. Right? Well, in a way, if you combine it with CCS, the carbon storage, carbon capture and storage, then you can theoretically eliminate the CO2 emission. But also we can think about producing hydrogen from using the renewable energy. So there are many options. So we need to have a kind of a critical assessment. What are the environmental impacts? What are the costs? What are the implications for business? So that we really need to have more detailed information and more critical assessment on that. So on this point, I think Japan and Australia can work together. So this will be also can be applicable to electric vehicles and all the batteries. So these are quite important areas now. But then I think we really need to have more comprehensive critical assessment. And then the second domain which I could mention now is the governance of emerging technologies with stakeholders. So on this, I had mentioned the smart cities, in the sense that, as I just mentioned, that data is increasingly available from different devices, different sources, from IoT, satellite imaging, and also the buildings, and also automobiles. So how we can manage a lot of data from different sources, and then use them to tackle, let's say, urban challenges, including climate change, and also circular economy, and also biodiversity protection. So here, I think, in a way, Australia has been working on this. I'm editing a special collection papers for Journal Data and Policy, and then I actually reviewed one paper coming from researchers in Melbourne. And then they are really working on this topic by making kind of experiment by trying to the citizens engaged in the data governance processes. So this is, I think, increasingly important in the sense that, let's say, some other countries, let's say China, is also really actively pursuing the smart cities. But then the approach would be quite different. So I think on this point, Japan and Australia can work together to somehow propose what to be the appropriate way of designing and implementing and evaluating smart cities, including all the environmental and societal dimensions. And then to make a proposal to, let's say, international standard or a kind of internationally accepted the practice so that not only just the technical performance, but also we really need to incorporate all the societal dimensions so that we try to promote smart cities as human-centered and inclusive exercise. So that would be also one thing which I could mention. And then increasingly, we have the challenge of data governance across the border. So how we can manage trans-border data flow. This has been a big topic, particularly I think G20 in Osaka some years ago. The Japanese government proposed this data free flow with trust. And in a way, this has become, I think now, a very important challenge. And also this year, the Hiroshima G7 summit, and this has been very emphasized. So how we can implement that is a big challenge. So I think some of the countries are really now talking about data sovereignty, for example. Do not allow data to go beyond the national border or regional border. Some of the ASEAN countries also now some are adopting this kind of approach. But at the same time, I understand ASEAN has kind of regional agreement about data flow within ASEAN. So how we can manage that? Maybe Japan and Australia can work together to make a kind of well-established framework so that we can exchange data across borders so that we can benefit from all the data collectively, because increasingly machine learning is based upon how much data you have, good data you have. So in that sense, Japan and Australia can work together to propose all this rulemaking with regard to data governance. And this is also quite important for the AI governance, which is also a very big topic. And this year's Hiroshima summit, they started the Hiroshima AI process in cooperation with OECD and also GPay, which includes Japan and Australia. So probably we could try to promote the whole agenda of AI governance with transparency, accountability, and inclusiveness. So this will be especially important because now there are two fears about AI's existential risk to humans. Some of the researchers argue. So we need to maintain a system with all this transparency and accountability, and also we also need to deal with kind responses to information manipulation, disinformation. So how we can maintain a trustworthy system for AI governance. So these are some of the ideas which I have at this moment for Australia-Japan collaboration in the future. Thank you very much.
One of my big worries with AI is and risk is that it gets better at creating the algorithms that keep me watching Netflix till all hours of the morning. So. Anna.
I find it really interesting that the three science and technology people come with slides today. We were told you can have slides, and to us that's, oh, we better have slides when we come along so we can talk. So I often get asked, what is space? I never get asked, what's astronomy? But I get asked, what do you mean by space? Or people have different ideas of what that word means. And so I wanted just to take a few minutes to just introduce what I think that means and what the community, international community thinks that means. So we're all on the same playing field before we have a conversation in Q&A. So space, often when I talk to people, when I say space, they kind of think of human exploration. They think of mining on asteroids. They think of, which is awesome and cool, I'm a scientist. They think of Elon Musk's car going off into space. I rose my eyes. But that's what they think of space when I say it. They think of rockets, they think of launch. But that's not what space is today. in economically, how much we spend on it, what we do, that's and how much we rely on it. So it's more like the pictures on the screen. This is really what space, the domain of space, means to us as humanity today. This is what we use it for. So we use it for navigation, we use it for communication, we use it for automation, remote automation, remote communication. We use it for telehealth. How do we connect people in remote locations? How do we connect them to hospitals, to doctors to get information? Remote education. We use it for Earth observation. It's an ultimate laboratory to understand what our planet is doing, how it's changing over time. Obviously a big issue right now. It's the easiest way to monitor large areas of ocean, of land, which is very important for Asia-Pacific region in particular. Think fishing, legal and illegal fishing, think what's happening on the waters, think what's happening in terms of climate adaptation, bushfires, sea level rise, all that kind of stuff is monitored from space. That kind of data is used in the international courts of law when you're talking about changes in land use, for example, or illegal land use. Often that kind of data is used there. It's used for disaster services. It's the easiest, cheapest way, sorry to get down to money, but often it is. It's the easiest way to monitor large areas of ocean and land to be that connector, I suppose, to emergencies, etc. And of course, it's used prolifically in the military and domain as well. So that's what space is to me. That's what space is internationally, and that's what we depend and use it for. If it wasn't here today, if it wasn't here now, if the services were switched off, we would be in a lot of trouble. This recording would not be broadcast, for example. That's not the end of the world. But, or maybe it is, I don't know. No, I mean, but you see what I mean. It's integrated in everything we do. We don't think about it. We don't think of space that way. So I just wanted to get that out a little bit. Economically, the space services, space activities total in 2022 something like $500 billion internationally. Australia, a lot of that is in communications, navigation, services. So think services is paid for via services on the ground. So it's us on the ground that are funding to a large extent most of what we do in space. Australia, from Earth observation data, Australia not really renowned to be an upstream provider of space services, our government spends something like $2.5 billion a year on Earth observation data. So we care about it, and that's just for Earth observation. But a point I wanted to get across today is that the nature of what we can do in space is changing, and it's changed roughly over the last 10 years due to a rapid reduction in access. It's got a lot cheaper to access space, and infrastructure is everything for space. So it means that how we operate in space, what we can do and how we can fund it has turned upside down over the last 10 years. If you look at the SpaceX's influence on the Ukraine war, for example, and communications and how that was able to be adaptable, you're talking about a move from a single large communication satellite to a swarm's not the right phrase scientifically, but think of it like an organic swarm of smaller, cheaper satellites that if you take one out, you replace it with another, and they're all very organic, I suppose, in that sense. So the nature of what we do, how we do it, is changing. And that's why Australia cared about it 5 years ago to start their own space agency, because we realized we had a lot to offer, but the nature of how you do that is changed. And countries like Japan, who are just powerhouses in space upstream and activity and exploration, for example, amazing effort from Japan on the world stage. It also, I think, in its community is reflecting on how space is changing and how it can react to that. Some are doing it better than others. I think Japan's doing pretty well. selfish plug for my own institute here at ANU. We started up 5 years ago in response to the fact that our government wanted to start its own space agency to support a growing space sector. My approach, though, wasn't to pick one technology over another. My approach was to do it the other way around, was to say, we want to solve society's greatest challenges. To do that, we need a multidisciplinary team. A lawyer is just as important as an economist, as important as someone who does food growth, plant growth, water purification, rocket fuel. It didn't matter. And so we have a very broad participation in our leadership. There's about 30 academics, all from different disciplines, and it really lifts the level of conversation. I love being a scientist. I'm very good at it. We get lost in little tiny tunnels, okay? It's really good to be lifted up to important national conversations and solutions, and that's what a multidisciplinary team does for you. So 3 areas we're looking at in Australia are sustainability, space sustainability. This is both how can space help sustainability on the ground, but also how do we, to us, because space is so important to be, because space is so important to us, we also care about the sustainability of space itself. So we don't want it to get damaged in a way that we can't use it anymore. And space is big, to quote Douglas Adams, but there's a very thin layer around the Earth called low Earth orbit. That isn't big, that's very thin. And it's the cheapest access, so all your business cases and commercial space are there, because it's smallest gravitational potential, it's cheaper to get to. So that's where your commercial business is. But if you start having a lot of debris and satellites and thousands of constellations, you're going to start running into trouble. So sustainability, yes, is not just using space to keep us sustainable on the ground, but it's about us making sure that we protect space as well. Space education, this is workforce training, especially in Australia. We have a different paradigm to Japan here in that sense with space. We have to educate our people into what space means and how they can operate in space. And lastly, something we're very interested in, especially at ANU, is how can we be using space as a way to partner across the Asia-Pacific to be solving things that we all care about in that region. Space is expensive even with that cheaper access today. It's still not 3 cents, okay? So how can we be partnering together to solve challenges that we have regionally as well? Oh. Don't know what happened there. It stopped. Three initiatives we're looking at. The first is to do with climate adaptation. Bushfires are a big issue in Australia. What we want to do is bring some ownership of that problem. We want to bring our scientists and technologists to come in, not when the fires have happened, but actually turn that around and say, you know what, if you can figure out where these fires are going to be 3 months in advance, pre-season, how can you adapt? How can you get everyone together to do something about it so that you can reduce the massive fires that we saw 3 years ago that are coming again? Let's not close our eyes, they are coming again. So how do we, internationally, nationally, do something about that? We're also doing a similar response for water as well, groundwater measurement, so that we can give towns a heads up in advance so that they can change their water usage, for example. I won't go into how, it's very cool. If you like gravity measurements, it's totally cool, but that's how you do it. It hasn't, I'm sorry. Am I pressing the button too much?
No, I'm doing it for you. So
oh man, you should have said that before. I've been pressing the button. Sorry, I've almost broke the key. And I'm just putting these projects up to give you a flavor of what's happening in new space. So space medicine for Earthlings. So this is a project where, during COVID, especially in Australia, we realized that access, especially remote communities, to healthcare was a real issue. It's expensive, it's hard for them to do so. And with aging populations as well, it's a, people want to be at home, for longer now. But how do we provide them the level of healthcare? We heard a little bit about that in the previous talk, actually. So this is a project where actually we're using a space problem, a problem that's in space right now, which is how do we enable the next space travelers who will be selected not by youth and health, but by if they can afford it. How do we protect them going into space if they have previous conditions, or even someone with asthma? Or how can we risk assess if someone can go, in a space hop or something like that? So we're modeling using AI and other techniques. We're trying to model in software the human body or systems within the human body, and combining that with sensors, wearable sensors, being able to, in advance, work out how the human body reacts over time and can you pick up conditions. So while the funding for this project is actually about space travel, the real reason we want to do it is because it can be applied here on the ground. So you can think about people being in remote communities, or any of us getting older being at home, being able to be monitored in a telehealth way, so that we can feel confident that we can be at home and getting elements picked up. And lastly, another COVID crisis. I'm not sure that's the right phrase, but something out of COVID that came out was the importance of communications, human access to communications, secure communications, and the limitations of radio frequencies to be able to deliver that. So a solution to that is to change to using optical wavelengths, lasers in fact, frequencies we can't see with our eyes. This is, it's not shining, but these aren't frequencies you'd see with your eyes, but these are frequencies that you can pack a lot more punch into the wavelength. You can basically transmit a lot more information. You'll start to see some of these technologies coming out very soon. In Australia, we have projects funded both in Canberra and on the West Coast to be doing the ground segment of these new technologies. Why? Because Australia is huge. It has a lot of community who know how to build these things. And also, we're mostly cloud-free. And so if you want to do any R&D in quantum communications in the future or downlink, Australia, the continent itself, it's just a huge opportunity. And in fact, we're working with NICT in Japan to do the very same. This is my last slide. So just coming back to opportunities here, I'm personally very interested in the application of new space to solving regional issues, and using that to enable, my sector, Australian sector, to be a part of that, where we're not replicating the wheel. And I wanted to touch on a couple of projects here that kind of highlight the importance of, sometimes it is important to have ownership of this hardware, of these systems. You're not going to own all of it, it's expensive, but there are crucial times when you do want to be in control of your own assets. The top right picture here, during the January 22 eruption of the Tonga volcano, that seismic shift was enough to rupture all the underwater cables that went into the South Pacific, 20 islands in that region. And there was a University of the South Pacific educational satellite, which was repurposed by those 20 islands to be able to provide communication in that region. So that story is just emphasizing a very small investment in space technology, new space technology now, was able to provide continued connectivity into that region when otherwise they wouldn't have had that. And in the bottom left picture, recently there was an outage in one of the UK Inmarsat satellites, which gives a lot of communication data to agricultural farms and automated agritech in the region. In Australia, when that went out, it meant that farmers they were no longer able to, their equipment didn't work, the tractors didn't work, they had to go out and, try and do the best that they could. And it was quite a significant loss of income for them. So there are many cases where having your own ownership, working in partnership with other regions, with other countries, matters. It matters to have that technology and experience built in-house, as it were, to deliver your joint desires, as it were. And top left, I just want to finish with, so Japan and Australia, I think, are just starting their space sort of collaboration. But our space agency aided the JAXA, the Japanese space agency, with their landing of the infamous, positively infamous, renowned Hayabusa mission and Hayabusa 2 mission. So JAXA were able to, Japanese community were able to go to an asteroid, land, take a sample, come back. And these things are coming at hypersonic velocities, probably 20 kilometers per second at that point. They're coming from a long way away. And so having a big target, which you're a trusted friend you can actually aim for, was very critically important. And so the Australian Space Agency worked with the Woomera site to be able to host that landing back, which was a couple of years ago. So I'd like to hope that given new space and new possibilities and growing issues in the region, not even just military, I just mean due to climate change, food migration, what's happening on our oceans, etc. It'd be really great if we could be doing more work together. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. And that's a terrific place to leave things to when we move into the Q&A to talk about how that might come about. Mr. Izada.
Last person to be a guest speaker today. So actually, Kaizuka-san was invited by Ippei-san. Shiro-san invited me. So Shiro-san is really supportive for me as always. So why not? I want to contribute to your community today. Appreciated your invitation. So first of all, want to introduce myself briefly. So as you can see, my name is Takiro Izuhara. So please call me Easy. So Australian friend give me this, short nickname. So I like it. So I am born in Gunma Prefecture. Gunma is north of Tokyo. So how many people went to Gunma previously in the past? Awesome. Thank you so much. I think you might know, so there are so many mountains, there are so many snow and hot springs. So indeed, I am a mountain boy. So I went to Tokyo to study at Keio University, and then after my graduation, I worked for IBM Japan. In 2016, I moved to Singapore to work for SoftBank. I lived in Singapore almost 5 years. And then, amid the COVID in 2021, I moved to Australia to set up new office based in Melbourne. So I have 2 kids. So 2 of them are going to government primary school now, so named Glenferrie Primary School. So actually, the biggest achievement I did in Australia so far is to be a part of PTC, so Parent Teacher Council. I would like to learn about local community as well as to see the gap between Australia and Japan in terms of educational system. So for example, as you know, in Japan, there is plenty of homework from the age of primary school student. But as you know, in Australia, no homework at all. So I had a chat with the principal. The principal said to me, so easy. So don't need any homework for the student because it's the time for kids, for family to spend together at home after school. So cool, So this is really nice advice for me. Social activity is the most important in Australia. And then, happy wife and happy life. So this is second advice. So I received, I have to follow. Anyway, so want to introduce my company, what I am doing now. So as you can see, ST Solutions Australia. So SoftBank Technology Solution Australia. We are providing technology as a solution. So main solution are artificial intelligence and robotics. They, unlike ordinary items such as iPad, tablet, mobile phone, the use case of artificial intelligence, the use case of robotics, you don't know that. That's the reason why at the beginning we are providing the use case of artificial intelligence. We are providing the beneficiary of robotics. To do so, happy to be more creative, to come up with the use case. Through our initiative, happy to create further opportunity for everyone, because we believed technology can help us to solve the problem in the community as well as to take on new challenge. So that's the reason why we want to create new opportunity for everyone. So for example, as you can see, Husik-san mentioned, we have a paper this July. So we did a project with ACT government, ALU, and University of Canberra. As you can see, big boss, Andrew Bassan met the paper in person, greeting paper together. I want to share several use cases in terms of robotics, humanoid robot named paper we have. So what we are doing in Australia so far. So we did a programming class. So it's really nice, as you know, for kids, especially for STEM engagement. And then we are working with community. So kind of Victorian Police, Starlight Children Foundation. So paper can be ambassador for them. But of course, human beings as a policeman, they can do explanation what they are doing for the community. But paper can do so. If paper can do so as their ambassador, paper can help them to get more attention from the community, especially from the kids. So it's a smarter way, as you can imagine. Also, paper is working with several government school, primary school, as an assistant of Italian teacher. We are also worked with RMIT, Monash University for their Chinese class, as well as for Japanese class. I can see so many potential because there are so many people, as you know, who are studying Japanese, more appreciated your interest. Of course, we are working with academy, university, as well as corporation. So paper, can connect ChatGPT to make them more smarter. They actually, Husik-san, give me, several questions for this session. So what opportunity are there to deepen collaboration between Japan and Australia in science and technologies? I am thinking about this question to put my dedication. Actually, as you can see, so there are so many answers from my side. For example, joint research initiative. Exchange program, technology transfer, public-private partnership, startup ecosystem, blah, blah, blah. I hope you can make sense, these of questions. But as you can see, bottom of this slide, right-hand side, by ChatGPT. Indeed, I had a chat with ChatGPT so to get this question, to get this answer for these questions. So nowadays, I am always talking to ChatGPT like this. What I want to highlight through this message. Indeed, technology is ready. Technology can help us to start further conversation like this topic. Of course, we are not ChatGPT. Need to put our dedication by human beings. What is the difference to move forward? So this is also very, very important. To do so, I put my perspective to come up with several suggestions, so like this. So first of all, try new technology like myself and use it in the local community. For example, ChatGPT, I did. Actually, my son, year 5 at the primary school, he can chat with ChatGPT, the artificial intelligence, several artificial intelligence is available, as you know. For example, computer vision. As you know, the Australian retail company like Kmart and Bunnings, they did AI project as a trial last year. But the community argued them to stop the project because they worried about AI. They don't know the beneficial of AI. That's the reason why they want them to stop the project. Of course, I accept that. I respect the community. If I can add my message from technical perspective. Actually, as you know, there are so many CCTV. Over 20 years, actually, literally, we are captured. So in terms of data of the collection, either by CCTV or AI, it's the same. Despite that, everyone worried about AI because they don't know that. So that's the reason why to understand the community by community is different. To understand that, I hope we can work together with community. So for example, in terms of personal security, at the end of year concert at my primary school, my children's primary school, at the beginning, principal said, please do not take any photo at all for security issue, private issue, private matter. Of course, everyone, most of them follow the direction. So in Japan, what is the difference? So in Japan, if I have a child who will graduate from the school today, I am keen to the place, where I can take the photo very well. So it's acceptable in Japan. So like this, even if we are doing the same thing, so community requirement expectation are totally different. So that's the reason why I love, working overseas. So technology itself is same. So even if when we do the project in Japan, in China, in Singapore, in the US, technology itself is the same. But community is different. Country by country, requirement expectation, the concern are totally different. Why we are doing technologies with technology? Because we want to help the community. To do so, have to work together to understand them. So this is my suggestion. The second, please respect technology like your body, like your friend. So if you have technology, you are expecting them, to do everything. So actually, I am also lazy. I hope my robot can do everything. But instead, cannot do so. Robotics cannot do so. So like your body, when you have new member in your team, you will help them. You will train them. You will provide any procedure to them. And then once they be adjusted in the environment, they can help you. More like this, I hope everyone can respect the technology. Once technology, robotics be adjusted in the environment, be installed in the environment, they can help us. So please respect the technology like your friend. The number 3 suggestion. So strengths, let's strengthen our relationship as a friendship together. So actually when I moved to Australia, I can see so many good relationship between Australia and Japan as a friendship. So it's really nice. So if, when we look at relationship between, for example, Japan and US, Japan and China, because of economy, because of politics, because of defense. Sometimes, so it's working, but sometimes it's not working. To keep on good relationship, sustainability, I hope we can have a good relationship as a friendship. If you help your friend, if you help your family, why not? Without any reasonable reason, want to help them. So like this relationship, we had already had. We want to keep on this good relationship as a friendship. As you can see, left-hand side. So it was taken in New York City in 1900. So as you can see, there are so many cars with hose on the road, with the hose. But when you look at right-hand side, it was taken in New York City in 1913. There is no hose, machine replaced the hose. Indeed, in short period, technology will be changed. So actually, we don't know what kind of technology will be appeared in the future, in near the future, like this photo. So we are in unexpected era at this moment. But if we can use technology, they can help us. How we can do so? To maximize the utilization of technology, what we need. So this is my last message. Thank you so much. Last message. So actually how to do so? From my understanding, as my opinion, we need big picture, what country we want to become. So what kind of relationship we want to keep on together. So like this big picture, we need it to design, installation plan to design how to use new technologies. Actually, so far, I put my suggestion from technical perspective, but today, not for technology session alone, so it's for Australia and Japan. So this is my final message for today. So actually, as I mentioned, there are so many good relationships, and then there are so many sister cities. So between Australia and Japan, as you know, I think 107 sister cities we have. Of course, like my hometown, most of sister cities are not in, like Tokyo metropolitan. Most of them are in countryside, like my cities. So they have so many problems getting older, as you know, not only in Japan, but also in Australia too. To help them, I want to share two projects with you all. So first project, so led by the Japanese government. So Digital Garden City Nation, Digital Day and Toshi in Japanese. I think you might know. So Tokyo again, so they have a lot, they have everything. Tokyo is really convenient. But unlike Tokyo, countryside is not convenient. Like my home country, hometown. I love hometown anyway. Japanese government want to make rural area more convenient through digital capability. So it's the strategy, it's the vision named Digital Garden City Nation. To achieve this goal, they are focusing on Web 3.0, DAO, decentralized autonomous organization, NFT, non-fungible token. They want to share second project with you, so Yamakoshi DAO project. I think some of you might know Yamakoshi, which is in Niigata Prefecture. So actually, they have, the number of residential in Yamakoshi, just 800 people are living there, just 800. So if, they do not do anything, they will getting die, unfortunately. But, they do so many things with NFT. So they are creating, NFT named Nishikigoi NFT, and then they distributed this NFT to real residents free of charge first. And then they are asking so many people, who want to buy this NFT. Upon the person buy this NFT, they are eligible to be a digital resident. Both real residents and real residents and digital residents working together to plan the coming festival Matsuri, what kind of activity they will do to draw the attention out of the community, what kind of budget they will secure toward the next financial year. Budget is very important. And then if the person do some contribution as voluntary, they will give them NFT as an award, good system to encourage the community. And then they will talking together on the DAO community. Despite where they are living, they can talk together, they can work together. I think this concept we can refer to keep on good relationship as a sister city because they have already had so many good relationships. To keep on this good relationship to the future for next generation, don't need to be physically. We can communicate together digitally, virtually. Of course, hybrid is also important. But like this technology, we can refer to. Thank you so much.
Okay, so I feel like the first thing I need to say is if there are any ANU students still here who might be in one of my classes, please don't submit an assignment that says by ChatGPT 3.5 or indeed 4.0 for them. Although it's true, they do give a general sense of the direction to go. It becomes difficult as a faculty member to set good assignments. So we've got about 20 minutes for questions. I'm just going to lead off with a couple and then open the floor just to kind of get things moving. And I wanted to start with you. You made a really interesting comment about Australia's space agency and Japan, really at an entry point of beginning to collaborate more together on a bilateral basis. And so I was wondering if you could share with us a little bit more about how that's happening. And what direction you think it's going to go in. I was particularly really interested in the comment that you made that because of the economics of space have really changed, that you've got a whole new set of actors coming in, commercial actors primarily, as well as changes in technologies, it's like miniaturization and small satellites getting put up and all those kind of things. So, presumably that would have an effect on the stakeholders or the actors involved in international collaboration as well. So some thoughts along those lines, if you could.
Yeah, that's a lot to unpack. But so my experience over about 20 years working with Japanese colleagues and institutions on astronomy was amazing. And if I could just copy paste that into space, I'm going to retire really well. But space is not astronomy. So whereas Japan and Australia are hyper-aligned on astronomy and what that means, and astronomy is a discipline. It's a small discipline in physics, which is another discipline. Space is a domain. So then you can't compare the two of them at all, really. But whereas Japan and Australia, and internationally, people are aligned on what are the big challenges in astronomy? What are the top 3 things we want to do? We all agree on it. We all go behind closed doors. We fight, on what those 3 things are. But when we come out as a community, the astronomy community, we know exactly what they are, and we know how we achieve them. And it makes our story, it lifts the game, and it makes our story much cleaner, I suppose you could say. And it means that we can work very well together. I still love working with my colleagues in Japan. It's very high quality, very similar attitudes to contracting and things. It's like, it'll be all right, mate, and so I wasn't expecting that when I first started 20 years ago. But space is very different, and the maturity of our 2 countries with regards to upstream space in particular are very, very different. And one of the biggest challenges in Australia is for people to I suppose, educate the government, advisors and ministers on what space means. And that's the level we're at right now. And I'd say we've gone a little bit backwards in 5 years. So I don't want to start so negative. I'm usually not a negative person, but I'm just very practical. And so we've kind of gone back a little bit on what does that word mean, And so in Australia, in the Australian community, we have a little bit of work cut out to be bringing it back to actually space is not about just rockets and just this and just that. It's actually very important to our way of life. We're already spending a lot of money on it. So that's the first difference. Whereas in Japan, their story is so bright. Certainly as an external person, it's such a success story. It's intertwined with, I suppose, national pride, certainly on the international stage. And their achievements are just spectacular. So we have a big difference there. But that being said, we're starting to see more projects where we're coming together in a complementary way. And so the Hayabusa one was just the start of that. But I think in areas like quantum I'll pick quantum communications. Is one of them. So Australia brings a lot of positives, a lot of necessary components to a world where we want to be connecting quantum computers as the next internet, right? So, for example, so we bring a lot of positives to that table, and one of them being the ground infrastructure that you need to create this new internet of the future, right? So, and that's hard to do from a smaller country. So that's something we can bring to the table regionally in a story that we all need to work together on to get happening, because it's so big. And so I think in areas like that, you don't start with the word space. You start with in this case, quantum communications. How do you join quantum computers up? Everyone talks about computing as being the only problem. Okay, but no one talks about how you connect two computers up, right? That's not easy. Two quantum computers, right? So how do you actually do that? Well, space does play a big role there, and it's something that Australia can bring to the table, and we can be working with Japan on things like that. So we're starting to have those conversations. Disaster management is another one, for example. Meteorology is a big one too. So Japan have very sophisticated assets in space. How can we improve their bandwidth by using optical communications, for example? So trying to build on the stuff that we're really good at individually already and then bring it together to solve something which is bigger than the sum of its parts, I suppose is the right way to start.
Yeah, fantastic. It's, I mean, I work in the energy space, and, often the bilateral economic relationship is talked about, one that's highly complementary because we've got a lot of resources which have helped fuel Japan's economic growth for decades. But it is interesting, as you look across different sectors, as you've just done now as well in this area, that there are really substantial complementarities that exist in other areas as well, right? We really focus on the natural resource piece, but in other areas as well. As you were saying before, even lack of cloud cover, right? I sort of feel like being a big country like Australia is, it's just got some inherent advantages. It can lead to collaboration opportunities, as you were describing. Professor Yanima, I wanted to ask you about smart cities. And so it kind of, I remember this, I don't know if anyone here remembers the multifunction polis from 1987 Hawke regime, government, I mean, remember that? It was an idea, METI-driven idea about building a city in Japan. But I wanted to come at the issue of smart cities from a slightly different angle. In your initial remarks, and often when we think about greater collaboration, let's say in energy transition, we think about it on a supply chain basis, right? So that is Australia going to move up the value chain in battery manufacturing, right? Or in green steel, are we going to start moving up the value chain? And smart city is really interesting because it involves a lot of amalgamation or integration of multiple supply chains. It's a really quite complicated picture that's a struggle to do within a particular country. And so how international collaboration would happen between countries using a concept like smart cities is a complicated thing to think about. Like, would one to do that at a bilateral government-to-government level or at an industry level? Or would you think about carving off particular parts of the kind of smart city concept and pushing collaboration within that? How do you think you would progress something like that?
Thank you very much. That's a very important question. I'm actually looking for answer to that kind of question with my students and colleagues. Yes, so in a way, I think the idea of innovation has been also changing in the sense that traditionally we just talk about R&D investment, which is very important, obviously, in the case of let's say, semiconductor and others. But then increasingly, the technologies are used in an actual context like cities, and then try to learn by using it, and then making mistakes, and then try to learn, and then change it, and then to improve it, and then use it, and then get feedback. And so this kind of innovation is also getting quite important. And then in the case of smart cities, you have many stakeholders from different sectors, which are not traditionally connected with each other. But then now we are getting connected, like transportation, buildings, land use, and then energy, and others. So that gives actually a big challenge to traditional Japanese companies, for example. When I talk with people in the companies, they say that, well, usually they talk with they are just suppliers. They have relationships, and then they know what they want. But then that increasingly they need to talk with companies in different sectors, and also they need to talk with local governments, and then they need to talk with the citizens. That requires, I think, different kinds of skills and knowledge. And also, they need to test these technologies on the ground by actually inviting users to use and then to get feedback from them. So I think in that context, we could think about, let's say, creating, a kind of living laboratories together. Also, international regulatory sandboxes, in a sense that, as we discussed, that there are so many challenges like privacy issue, data security, others, and we don't know how to solve these questions. So we just want to create a space together and then to test these advanced technologies. Maybe quantum communication might be also AI, IoT, blockchain. These are somehow, we don't know how to govern these technologies. So in that sense, we create a space together and then test it together and then learn together. So that kind of opportunities might be a possibility for collaboration internationally. So I think, in a way, I think Japan somehow tried to do that in ASEAN countries like Thailand. For example, creating smart city and then inviting also local companies and then to do it. But then that we could obviously do it with Australia or other countries and then try to demonstrate that what are the issues, what the problems, and then we share the problems together and then to learn. And then hopefully by doing so earlier, then we can also propose regulations, policies, in a way, creating a kind of standard. So that would be something we could explore in the future.
It's very interesting. I want to move to questions from the floor, but I did want to acknowledge, Mr. Hisahara, the interesting idea that you have around using sister city relationships as they exist in order to use as a potential platform for furthering collaboration between the two countries. That's an interesting idea because often we think about science agencies or ministries which have got science sitting within the portfolio as the key locus through which you might see collaboration happening, but particularly as Professor Yarime said, if user feedback becomes an important part of actually the innovation process, then the kind of engagements that you've described, is a very, very interesting idea, and it's great to see you engaging locally already as a company. We've got about 10 minutes, and I want to open the floor up to questions. I can see a hand waving up the back here, so let's begin here. There's a mic that will be coming to you. If you could just let us know your name and affiliation, please. Thanks. And also who you address the question to.
Anita Burns. I'm from AJS New South Wales, among other things. I worked in technology in Japan, and I just see that the Japanese government's established a digital agency for more digital government to promote that anyway. I'm curious about how that's going, how the two, Yarime Sensei and Izuhara-san what they think about that, and about probably SoftBank doesn't need that help, perhaps, but how they see that and whether that's something that Australia should be emulating.
So, Mr. Hara, do you want to start? Japan's digital agency and SoftBank's engagement with that. You can pass if you want.
Thank you so much for the question. Actually, honestly, from my bottom of my heart, I need ChatGPT to answer the question. But anyway, I will try, okay? So actually, digital, of course, so depend on the capability of the person to tell the truth, what they are expecting, the digital agency, what kind of technology they want to use. Everyone is different. That's the reason why I need to talk to them. So this is my understanding. And then, so luckily, Japan has so many, actually population is decreasing, but still have so many population when we compare the list of countries to Japan. They can help elder person to be, buddy to teach them to use new technology. Actually, so this time, so thanks to Shiro-san, I was here. I shared, this YouTube with my dad and mom, who are living in Japan. So actually, for them, first time to see live stream So how to, join the live stream? I am helping them, to access the live stream. So everyone, in short, everyone is different. But if the person had body like myself to talk to my parents, they can, accept the technology to enrich their life. So this is my answer for your question.
Thank you very much. I think that's a very important question. Probably some of the people here from the Japanese government can answer better than I do. But just a reaction to that. So I guess traditionally there's a concern about the data possessed by the government can be used for other purposes, which are not really mentioned in advance. So that was actually the case in the case of COVID-19. For example, in the case I think of Singapore, they collected a lot of data and then they used some of the data for police investigation, for example, and that was not mentioned to the people in advance. So that kind of issue could arise. But then I think now, particularly after the COVID-19, we learned that we really need to use data more effectively and efficiently so that we can eliminate all the obstacles and barriers so that we can provide services more quickly and more accurately. So in a way, the challenge is that how we can manage data in a way that people do not necessarily need to have a concern about the data used for different purposes and properly managed and with accountability and transparency. So I think I understand that the Japanese government is trying to do that, but there are some issues about for those who are not necessarily familiar with all this digital system, the devices, and they may not be able to use it, and what happened when they have lost the cards and others. But then that probably this is a part of the process we need to deal with in a way that definitely we should really try to establish a system that the data can be used for providing services to the people.
Thanks. So let's go elsewhere. Take the gentleman here.
My name is Charles. My name is Charles Millward. I run a point-of-sale software company targeted at the grocery and liquor industry. And like a lot of businessmen, we see AI coming down the tracks at us with great speed. So this is addressed at the two gentlemen who addressed the issue of AI. How do you see AI evolving in the business community? Do you think it's going to become a very widespread technology and companies should develop their own AI capability, or do you think it'll become a specialized technology which a few companies will sell more broadly into industry and develop specific expertise?
Thank you very much. That's a really great question. To be honest, I don't know. But then, apparently, obviously there are some really handful big tech companies like Google and Amazon and these companies. They have a huge large language models, for example, and then simply other companies cannot compete with them because they have resources and expertise. But at the same time, it seems to be that there are many applications and you really need to have a specialized system. So it seems to be there's a kind of division of labor in the sense that some companies are big expertise and technology knowledge, they can really develop large language models with all the parameters. But then also you need to have a specialized companies provide, let's say, educational services, health services, energy services, and then they really need to fine-tune these systems to their specific applications. Yeah, there's a lot of debate about how to regulate large language models, for example. And then it seems to be big tech companies that now somewhat try to argue that, well, in the case of EU, they really try to initially put a large language model or foundation models as a high-risk domain so that they could be heavily regulated. But then that they are trying to argue that, well, they cannot be responsible for all the applications because they don't know how their models can be used. So in a way that they are trying to argue that, well, regulations should be applied to applications rather than large language models or foundation models, which can be used for many different purposes. So I think in different domains that there are many expertise, and you need to combine AI and domain knowledge. So how to combine them would be probably critical. So I think there are a lot of opportunities actually for startups to focus on particular domains rather than going into the arms race with all the big tech companies. So yeah, I think there should be many opportunities available. But then how to do it would depends upon how you can closely collaborate all the actors in specific domains and knowledge and experience.
And Masaru, if I could just follow up quickly on that. So your expectation would be then that regulation would be primarily domain-related and primarily national in character. Is there also a kind of international or collaborative perspective associated with regulation?
Yes, thank you very much. I think that is what is exactly going on at this moment. Yeah, well, in April, I attended a meeting I think organized by World Economic Forum by inviting all the big players in Silicon Valley in San Francisco, and then they made a kind of proposal. And then I think in July, the G7 summit, then they started this Hiroshima process for AI. And then I think in November, UK government is going to organize a big event about how to regulate AI. And then I understand that Japanese companies try to make a proposal for G7 kind of plan to how to regulate all these AIs. So internationally speaking, there are a lot of activities going on. But one challenge is that as I also mentioned, that OECD and the GPay, they are also quite important as hosting all these initiatives. But then, well, probably that China isn't involved. So I learned that the UK is going to invite China for the November meeting, but then I don't know how that happens. And in the case of the April meeting, Chinese companies are invited, but then in the end, nobody came to that meeting. So it seems to be the AI governance area, a lot of kind of increasing division as like G7 countries and affiliated countries, and then China and Russia and others. So how we can manage this would be, I think, one of the key challenges in the coming years, because AI affects everyone. So how to establish a kind of common ground or framework so that, in a way, and then we can compete with each other. But then how to manage that would be a big challenge.
Very interesting. Thank you, Mr. Izuhara.
Thank you so much for the question. So as you know, what the need for AI? AI needs the data. So many data needed for AI. So that's the reason why, like Amazon, like Meta, like Microsoft, as Yarime-san mentioned, big company will be dominant in the AI market because they have plenty of data for AI training. So this is my answer for your question. But at the same time, they cannot do everything. So that's the reason why, as he mentioned, so need to think about some specific use case. So for example, of course, ChatGPT is good at English. So rather than Japanese, so to complement the weakness of OpenAI. For example, we are working with OpenAI to deploy the version of Japanese for Japanese market. For example, previously we worked with IBM Japan to deploy the version of Japanese for IBM Watson. So like this specification, everyone needed, despite they are big company like Amazon, Meta, Microsoft. To answer your question, think about your specification, how you want to sell your product. So this is my understanding. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much. I think that we're out of time and should probably move to close the session now. I'd just ask you to thank our speakers for today. It's been a really interesting session. So I'm being asked to close the session for today. I'd like to thank everybody for staying for the day. It really brings home, that Australia and Canberra, and particularly the ANU, is a pretty special place when it comes to Japan-related work. There are not too many places outside Japan where you will have a room full of people, for a whole day where we focus on, the kind of, fairly technical and also detailed issues that we've been able to canvas today. It's a real kind of smorgasbord of different issues that we've looked at, and we've heard from some fantastic speakers. For me, there are kind of 2 or 3 major takeaways. I mean, obviously a lot of terrific detail. And many of our speakers are here, so you can catch them afterwards, hopefully, as well. Firstly, the really significant changes which are going on in the Japanese economy. I was, quite struck by that. I said I work in the energy and climate space, so I'm very focused on energy transition and what's happening to, what is happening to the energy mix, for example, or how electricity markets are getting redesigned, or so on and so forth. And I somehow missed this issue that we might have had a structural shift in which we've got kind of mellow inflation happening across Japan that could lead to a increase in wages over time. It's just kind of a world that I don't really remember. I remember the bubble. I remember what happened. I remember what happened after the bubble. But that kind of, steady, 2% inflation with wages growth as well is something that I was kind of really very struck by indeed. The other part of it, I guess, that was very interesting, aside from the macroeconomic picture, was also, the discussions around changes in industrial structure. So it was, very interesting to hear about this issue of, as was discussed, diversification or reshoring or friendshoring, I guess, is another set of language that we've heard in and around this kind of issue. And, in a way, it very much links to the panel that we had on foreign policy as well, because that was really about, states reinserting themselves into market in order to manage uncertainties as they see them, right? There's a whole bunch of geopolitical issues tied in there as well. So I think that, doing an update like this every year is really important. Of course, we would talk about geopolitical changes. That was part of the conversation last year. That'll be a part of the conversation next year as well, I'm sure. But within that broad change, structural changes like we've discussed with the economy, there are lots of, smaller dynamics which are fluctuating relatively rapidly, right? We heard the discussion of ASEAN, for example, and also from Mike Green about this being the year of implementation when it comes to a whole series of different changes across Japan's defense posture. Which have been really significant, and Melanie Brock's comments as well on thinking about security more broadly and the changes that you're seeing in Japan, and also Australia's need to do better were also really very welcome indeed. The last part, we've just heard the session, so it's probably fresh in your minds. But I think that issue of kind of structural shift, driven in this case by climate, and government policy once again, beginning to shape markets in significant ways in order to change the industrial structures of both Australia and Japan, was a kind of key theme there. And my story, as someone who's worked with and in Japan for really since the early 90s, is that there are a tremendous array of different opportunities for collaboration, that is complementarities between Australia and Japan. We often focus on natural resources, but as we heard from space, and also as we think about technology issues, including IT, robotics and AI, there's really a lot to explore. And the Australian government now, and I think the Japanese government, are also kind of building capacity in the area to be able to put themselves in a better position to be able to figure out how to exploit that through collaboration together. So I'm an optimist too. I think Anna said she was an optimist by nature, and I'm an optimist too. So I think we'll have a lot to talk about in next year's update. Let me now hand the floor to Ippei to make a few thanks to people who have helped make today possible, and then we'll close. Thank you.
So don't worry, two concluding remarks are too much. I know that, so I will be very short. And Ludovian already offered a very comprehensive remarks, so I would like to thank, first of all, the Shiro. So Veronica and I started the Japan update 10 years ago. But the first event is rather easy because it's a new thing. I can get the funding rather easily. But the continuing 10 years is a significant job. So it's really thanks to the continuing effort by Shiro Armstrong. So please support him to continue this event. And also I would like to thank that there are lots of staffs help this event. So that, can you tell, Tess is here? Tess. Yeah, Tess is the boss, and Tess is the engine of this event. So she did everything, and also her team helped the event quite a lot. Please join me thanking for the student assistant. And the last but not least, for those contributing in the session as a presentation and the discussing, and for all of you to participate in the event in a very active manner. Thank you so much. And Shiro already mentioned that we have a schedule for next year, so that we usually have this event the first Wednesday in September, so it will be the September 4th, 2024. Keep it in your schedule. And it's a way advanced, but keep it in the schedule. And see you definitely next year. Thank you very much.